All right, I'll start. Thank you for coming. It's nice to see you. I hope we'll have a few more people coming. Before my friend Jerry introduces our speaker, I want to make an announcement. We are not meeting in December, but in January, our speaker will be Andrew Persons. He's the city manager for Gainesville, and he'll be talking about things that might impact what will be happening to us here at Oak Hammock. So let me turn it over to Jerry Kirkpatrick.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's program sponsored by the League of Women Voters here at Oak Hammock. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening. His name is Mac Deneen. He's a second-year law student at the University of Florida. And I'm getting a wave here. What's are we? Oh, the wave isn't to me. The wave is to the screen. Okay. I couldn't see that. All right, I'm going to proceed, and hopefully we'll get the technical issue resolved here. Mac has a PowerPoint, and he'll be presenting that this evening. But Mac's a second-year law student at the University of Florida. He's a graduate of Georgetown, and he's a rated chess tournament player and an avid Gator fan, attends all the games, including going to Jacksonville to see the game with Georgia. And he wanted me to tell you that his father served in Vietnam. And Mac's aspiration is to be a judge advocate in one of the military services when he graduates from the law school at the University of Florida. But Mac's going to talk to us tonight about the VA claim system, which I know from the limited experience that I've had it can be very daunting to any veteran that has a need to file a claim, whether it's for disability or for some other entitlement that's administered by the VA. It's a very complex system, and it's almost nigh unto impossible to navigate the system without some kind of help or guidance in navigating it. So Mac works with a program at the law school that assists veterans in doing just that. And Mac is going to tell you about his program, how it works, and what it does. So Mac, I'll turn the program over to you.
Thank you very much. Happy Veterans Day, everybody. As mentioned, I am Mac Deneen. Can everybody hear me at this frequency? How about this frequency? Okay. As mentioned, my name is Mac Deneen, and I represent the University of Florida Levin College of Law as a 2L. They sent me here because I am, in fact, the most capable representative of the clinic and the oldest one, because I didn't just start the clinic this semester, but I began during the summer. I am very interested in making this a career, so I'm happy to be in this clinic and to pursue JAG and to be here speaking to you all. Now, the best way to describe the clinic is in its own words. We see here. listed as what just you do in the class itself if you are a member like me. So I thought it'd be interesting just to go point by point and see as the semester is winding down, just what of these things we have done. So Frank, can you move the caption up a little? Okay, so the first thing is advocate for clients before Article I tribunals in federal appellate courts generally. We do that on a daily basis, so we do that. Research, understand, and apply rules, we do that. We draft motions and propose regulations. I mean, this is stuff we do all the time, just busy, yes, deadlines. Well, sometimes we meet deadlines with frantic last-minute rushes, but we meet them. Develop evidence, do that. Interview and counsel clients, we definitely do that. Just if we don't write persuasively on behalf of the clients, this doesn't work, and so on and so forth. So maybe the most interesting there, if you're looking at it, is navigate ethical issues. Now, that comes up more often than you might think because this has the potential to be a very double-edged sword. Sometimes you press a claim and your client gets the benefits he's looking for. So how this works basically is if you want to get benefits, you have to establish a nexus. You have to have an ongoing disability that you can trace back to something that happened while you were in service. So if your leg got blown off in Vietnam and then one day you woke up and the arm had magically regrown, that's it. You don't have a disability anymore. Conversely, if something happened to you the day after you got out of the service, you unfortunately missed your window. The real issue as it concerns this is that your injuries, your disabilities are rated numerically. Now, they've basically passed statutes that deal with everything you could possibly have, like, for example, tinnitus. And if your tinnitus is rated at 60%, that equates to a certain level of damage that you have. So even if the VA recognizes that you have tinnitus, perhaps you are rated at a 40% when you think you should be 60%, which means more money. The risk is when you go in there and you've got 40% and you say, I should be 60%, and then the review board comes back and says, actually, you should only be 20%, and you'll be getting less money going forward. Believe it or not, the process isn't very combative. So for the most part, the government's supposed to be helping you on this. So it's not the most serious risk in the world, but it is something to be mindful of. All right, so the Board of Veterans Appeals is just one possible step along the process, and this is just a very simple summary of what we do. We write, we interview clients, we gather evidence, and we work with experts in theory. Beyond the board, we have the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, CAVC, and for the most part, our work is done on these two levels. So a better illustration of where these groups place is on the following chart. So it's cut off by the caption at the top, but this is how the system used to be before February of 2019 when they changed it, as we'll see on the next slide. So I'll pass it around later for anyone that wants to see it, but if you or your representative is dealing with the VA, you will be dealing with lots of forms that look like this. As with everything else, it's not as cut and dry in this, but this is one of the ways they want you to start the process, with an intent to file a claim form. Now, you can fill out this form or you can call up someone on the phone. And even if you file the wrong form, they have the power to accept it, but you run the risk of not getting what you want, which is them giving you benefits to a retroactive date as far in the past as possible. Now, if you applied today and you won 3 years from now, they would say, well, we're going to give you benefits retroactive to November 11th, 2025. But if somehow or in the other way you had the means to say that actually my benefit should have been done on November 11th, 1980, you're going to get a lot more money. If you do something that gives them the chance to say, actually, we're not going to give you the money as far back as you want, then that's money you may not be getting. So the best way to do it is to fill out a form like this. And that would basically be step one on the graph here. Just if you were wondering where it begins, it basically is in what we call the regional office. For the most part, that's not who we deal with. We're dealing with something basically beyond appeal notice of disagreement. Now, there are various mechanisms guiding the timing. That is how much time you have to respond to a decision and all that. But if you can see Board of Veterans Appeals decision later on, that's kind of where we are in the process. But at that point, it's like a game of ping pong. They've made their decision. We don't like it. We're going to appeal it. It's going to go up to the CAVC and so on. And at that point, it's another game of ping pong because we get there just, and this is making a long story very short, but the big part of it is we will write on behalf of the appellants. That's lawyer talk basically, but in a system where you have the appellants and the appellees, we will represent the appellant. So for this process, you can basically think of the veteran as the appellant. And technically speaking, it's the secretary of the VA, who now is Doug Collins, will be the appellee if you ever actually look up any of these cases. So if we're representing a client named Johnson, it would be Johnson versus Collins, for example. So basically, we write a brief, the government writes a brief, and this will be about, 10, 15, 20 pages or so. I brought an example here, but so you're basically making arguments like just the exam, the physical that my client got was inadequate because it was not sufficiently detailed. This is a reasons and basis argument, and you're basically stating that the VA did not follow the processes it had to. It did not do everything he had to, and therefore we should have won. But because the process is an adversarial, sometimes the government itself will say, you should have made this argument and that argument, because as mentioned, they're supposed to be helping you, the veteran, get as much money as possible. I know not everyone has always had a pleasant experience with the government. I know I haven't always had one, but at least in this context, I've dealt with professionals, and maybe I'll be lucky enough to only deal with professionals, but time will tell. But they changed the system, and as of February 2019, it looks like that. So the big difference is that once you get to the VBA decision, and that basically is the regional office decision. I know it's a little confusing when you're dealing with the RO and the VBA and the VA and the CAVC, and you're looking at these charts and you're wondering where these things are supposed to go. But the VBA is a part of the VA, and the VBA has the regional offices. But the important thing is that once you get to VBA decision, that's basically your first response from the government. And under the new system, you, the client, or our client, the veteran, has 3 options: the higher level review, the supplemental claim, and the appeal. Past the appeal, if you just choose to appeal the board decision to the Board of Veterans Appeals, then you can choose the direct review, submit additional evidence, and hearing plus evidence. Now, that's the sort of thing where I can take questions. Actually, I should say that at any point, at any time, any one of you can ask me anything. So if you're curious about this process now, feel free to ask, but it is It's the sort of thing where if you're just looking at the screen, your eyes can bleed. But the important thing to know is this, that the faster response you choose, that is, if you choose the higher level review, you'll probably get a decision in 125 days, as opposed to something like direct review over there, which can take up to a full year. The trick with the longer response times is that you can submit more evidence. So it really is up to you whether you want to balance a quicker response versus potentially being able to buffer your argument. Yes? I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
Wanted to know in your presentation of these up here, where is the comp and pen exam? Is that the appeals or what?
The compensation exam?
The comp and, right. Where is it there? Or is it not there?
Actually, what do you mean by compensation exam?
The comp and pen, the compensation, compensation exam. When, where they go, what they have to present for that, where is it on there?
Well, believe it or not, I'm not familiar particularly with the compensation exam, but that really sounds like something that you would have at the time of the initial claim, because the initial claim is when you want to have just gathered all of your evidence, like just.
Well, that exam, that is not performed by the veterans' primary care. They have to go somewhere for that. I think it's St. Petersburg, or they go somewhere. I think Bay Pines.
And you don't mean this is anything medical, do you?
Well, they have to have this exam first before they can start the claim. So I'm asking you, is it displayed there? Is that what you're talking about?
I would say I'm not actually familiar with a specific exam that you have to take in a specific place. You actually have enough leeway to choose what you want to submit for medical evidence. Like, we use something called Mednic, and it's basically a group of doctors we know, and we can say, you know, our client has this and that or the other thing kind of ailment. Can you write an opinion that says this? In theory, you can submit a medical exam that has been administered by anyone. The question is, you know, will the VA accept it? But I know of no exam where it has to be taken in a particular place. But past a certain point, though, like once you get to the appeal process, like unless you're choosing a route specifically to submit more evidence, you're kind of locked in. It's like you've taken the exams you're going to take. You've made the arguments you're going to make. And so whether it's any kind of medical exam or compensation exam or anything, as a general rule of thumb, it's better to have it as early in the process as you can. So I will say by the time you begin, it's good to have something like that done already. But frankly, there's no part of the process that couldn't be done at any time or any place. But the longer you wait, I think the more damage you do to your odds of being successful ultimately. But for this exam, where did you say you had to take it? All right, I will certainly look into that. And I think just communicating with Mary, I can just, any questions you have that I don't know, I will get the answer and I will transmit them to Mary. So just. Oh, if that's what you mean, yeah, that's basically the VA decision level, and that's basically what you're fighting for. Yes, yes. Yes. Yes, yes. If that's what you mean, just in terms of what you actually got for rating, that's at the heart of the matter. It's like if you're happy with what you got, you don't need us. Yes. But of course, sometimes you don't get service connected at all. So you are in fact rated at 0%. So that's its own bit of fighting, but we'll get to that. Any more questions? There it is. So this wall of text was taken directly from the official site for the CAVC. I'm not going to bother with all of it, although it is interesting. I just brought this up because it has the answer to the question of, if you don't like what the CAVC. Okay. Oh, no, I'm saying just, okay. Well, I just wanted to mention the one sentence, which is the only reason I put it up there. Just, if you're curious what happens when you don't like the CAVC decision, there are two courts you can appeal to. There's basically a federal circuit and, in fact, the United States Supreme Court. And we'll get to that, but our own clinic has had dealings writing briefs with the Supreme Court, but this is a rarer option. Basically, the CAVC is the highest court that we deal with. But even if they give us a favorable decision, that's not the end of the matter. So just sometimes they'll say that the board made a mistake and they'll kick it back down to the Board of Veterans Appeals, but that just means we got to go haggle with them a bit more too. All right, so this is a very big aspect of what we do. When you leave the armed service, you are basically given a discharge rating. Depending on that rating, you will have access to certain benefits, educational benefits and retirement benefits and the like, but don't take my word for it. Basically, depending on which 5 of these you got, you'll have access to varying levels of these 5 things on the left: VA disability compensation, VA health care, education assistance, mental health and sex trauma care, and employment training, life insurance, and home loans, not just for yourself, but for your family. So that's a big part of what we do. And especially considering the change in the world in recent years, if, for example, you were expelled in the past for homosexuality, just with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that's become a vibrant source of discharge claim upgrades. You can claim that for anything else, just like you can claim I have PTSD, I should be service connected for that. You can say that my discharge should be upgraded. And not only can you get the upgrade and get access to these benefits going forward, you can also get retroactive benefits as well. We basically recently had a client that I was personally working on get a discharge upgrade that he's been fighting for literal decades. Getting this could be the difference between getting fully comped medical care for cancer and not having that. So this is quite literally life-changing. And I know that this will be too hard to see, but I just thought it'd be neat to have a picture of the actual form, which is a DD-293, and that just illustrates part of the difficulty for the process, because for every little thing you want to do, there's basically a different form for that. You want to fight for your discharge upgrade, you need your DD-293. If you wanted to do the initial claim, you needed your 210966. I believe filing a particular claim ailment is a 526 EZ and so on and so forth. This is a very hard system to navigate without at least educated amateur assistance. right, so these are just some of our additional side projects when we have time. I should note that every member of the clinic has until the day before grades are due to have completed 270 hours working for the clinic. For us, that means we have to get that done, I believe, in the middle of January. And just sometimes you run out of clients. Just there may come a point when you've got 5 or 6 clients, but one is satisfied, so you're not working with him anymore. The other one, you're waiting on the opposing party to do something, so there's nothing to do there either. So perhaps to get your hours, you need to turn to another project. Now, an amicus brief is basically a friend of the court brief. You're making an argument in the form of a written document on behalf of someone else that is involved in a court case. And I believe that's the way that we've actually formally commented on 7 or 8 or so Federal Circuit / Supreme Court decisions. I know that my assigned partner in the clinic is working on something right now, and just these 2 things at the bottom, comments on proposed VA rulemaking and petitions are for VA rulemaking, are basically just little projects of scholarship. You go and study, you write up a formal paper, you say, your VA, you should change this, that, or the other rule. They don't help the clients directly, but theoretically, if our suggestions are adopted, the system should run a little smoother going forward. Yes. I've talked a lot, but what have we actually done in our several years of existence? So the Veterans Clinic is actually a pretty new fad. I don't know if anyone actually really existed at any school before 2010. And even though I'm not sure if every school has one, but it seems to be picking up steam. There seems to be regular conferences, and they're only getting more popular. Perhaps in the near future, every major school will have one. And I think that's a good thing, because since spring 2019, when we began under the leadership of Judy Clausen, who is still the professor there. Could you click for me, Frank? Okay. I've had Judy Clausen from the very beginning. Could you click for me? All right. She has testified to Congress itself on veterans clinics and veteran suicide. As mentioned earlier, just throughout our lifetime, we've gotten about 10 successful discharge upgrades to various clients. All right, several briefs, as mentioned, were written on the top level. And most importantly, we've won over $15 million for our clients. Just when you add up the benefits and the like that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise, just in a mere 7 years of work, that's $15 that we've gotten to people from the government that in fact deserved it. And I know that they deserved it, because if we didn't prove that they deserved it, they wouldn't have gotten the money. So that's the general gist of it, but I'm not quite done with my presentation yet. So I did want to pass around a bunch of papers, and I just want to get closer because there's something about this mic. Rings a little out in my ears. Yeah. Okay, so the first as mentioned is the intent to file a claim form. So for anyone that wants to call me or text me, and you can do this at any time, day or night, it is 305 725 2779. So you don't actually need a representative. If you wanted to do this all by yourself, you could, but you'll be dealing with a lot of forms like that one. And they're pretty much going to want to know everything about you, your name, where you live, all your private medical information, your social security number, when you served and all that. And frankly, we deal with some pretty heavy claims, especially those dealing with MST. That's what we call military sexual trauma. That's not something most people want to talk about, but it's the old rock and a hard place problem. If you don't talk about it, you're not going to get the benefits. So in the end, only the veteran can decide for himself if he thinks it's worth it, but you're potentially giving up life-changing amounts of money. It's not an easy decision. So the next thing I'm going to pass around is basically just an example of the statutes and regulations that we deal with. So Congress, if it so desires, can change the rules on this pretty much whenever it wants to. It can say, if it wanted, that every veteran should get $1 million. It hasn't done that, and it never will. But what it can do is say that if you were a veteran in the Gulf War and you served in Iraq or Iran or someplace like that, and later on you get cancer or mesothelioma or some particular ailment, they will give you presumptive service connection. That is, they will say that if you were there and you got this, you definitely got that because of military service. And that can be very helpful because you can have something and you could know for a fact that you got this when you were in Vietnam or you were in Kuwait or what have you. But if you can't prove it, then the government is not going to give you any money. It's very helpful to say that I was here and I got this. And it's like, well, that's all we needed to know. Here's your check. All right. And I think the last thing really worth passing around are basically a comparison of how the rules used to work with how they work now, and basically a sort of checklist. Because you need a checklist for this. It's like, what do I have? What are the documents I have that prove this? Why should I get the benefits, basically? And even if you get a representative like us, we're going to need your help. It gets a lot harder for us if you, the client, cannot get your medical documents for us. If you, the client, are not willing to share your story, if you, the client, are not willing to get testimony from those you know, from those you served with, then past a certain point, if we can't prove the things we need to prove, you're not going to be getting anything, not any benefits and not any money. So every client that I've personally worked with has gotten at least a little something. And we've actually had a lot of major success stories. Like one gentleman basically finally got a bunch of backdated claims, and it was something like, I don't know if it was quite like an instant 6-digit payoff in his bank account, but if it wasn't, it was very close. But just sometimes this is a years-long process. Okay, it's just, we had one gentleman, no joke, who was serving during the Kennedy administration. And a lot has changed since then, okay, just back then, something like PTSD was not going to just, be a meal ticket as these things were concerned. And if you had something that you didn't want to talk about, to put it bluntly, if you were raped by a superior officer, then that's something that for a bunch of reasons, you either didn't report to anyone or you reported it and your concerns got blown off. And, from what I've seen, we've run the gamut. We've had just clients that you couldn't talk to about these things, just they'd gotten mad, or just people they talked to in the past had gotten mad, or even worse, can you imagine just telling a VA provider just something like that? I've been sexually assaulted, and then the person either doesn't believe you or lectures you. Because we've had that. Are you going to want to tell anyone at that point? So I will say that in terms of getting an audience for arguments that wouldn't have worked once upon a time, in terms of Congress making it easier to get money for certain things, in terms of things not being as shameful as they once were, it's easier than ever before to navigate this system, but it isn't easy, and you have to be ready to fight for years. And if you are old and you are at risk for cancer, or even worse, if you have the cancer already, then you could quite literally be fighting against the clock if this is your only way to even get close to the medical coverage you need. And he basically had someone like that too. So our work isn't easy, but it is quite literally life-saving work. And again, I reiterate that I can't guarantee anything, but if you or someone you know has a claim to press or a claim to appeal or is looking to get some help in this process, just let me know, let Mary know, and perhaps our clinic can help you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
Mac, I have a couple of questions, but first of all, I want to commend you for your work in helping veterans. We certainly know that a lot of particularly young enlisted personnel may not have had much education and may have difficulty understanding the process and the forms, and clearly they need some help, and we appreciate that. But so as I understand it, this is a pro bono work for this clinic with the Levin School at the University of Florida. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then you said you have clients from coast to coast. So how do they hear about this clinic?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because we do have a client quite literally from California, and he knows us because his brother, who we also help, recommended us to him. And we work with other organizations. And let's say, for example, we have a client that we feel would be better served by another organization like the Veterans Consortium. We can say, we've helped you, but you're better off going with them now. And perhaps the opposite is true. Just we get referred clients all the time. So with these groups just covering different geographic areas and networking with each other, that does give you that national reach, especially when these programs are becoming more and more popular.
Okay, then did I also understand you to say that other law schools at other universities in the country have started clinics like this to help veterans?
That is correct. One of the big ones is at Missouri. I think they had one before they did. And I don't know if they host one every year. I don't know if different schools host different ones, but there was a big one in the past year, and they did host it.
Okay. And my final question is this. I do know that the federal government for years following Vietnam denied any responsibility for illnesses relating from Agent Orange. Do you still have any clients that are dealing with claims for illnesses related to Agent Orange?
So I know we definitely have, or at least had one Vietnam era one. And I don't think it's like the Gulf War where there's that presumptive connection. Congress can always decide otherwise, but for the moment, you can't just say, I was in Nam, I should get Agent Orange connection, and it's automatically granted. I want to say that we did because it's one of the arguments that's always at least worth trying. So yes, just there are still Vietnam era clients around. We have represented them, and I believe in at least the one case and probably more, we have made that claim.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to say one thing, that we're not dealing with the fallout from things that happened before my time, because my lifetime now encompasses the Iraq War, just all the stuff with Afghanistan. And what that means is the burn pits. So for those of you who don't know, just in all of our little Middle East adventures, it was apparently the policy to dispose of trash and other things with these giant burn pits. Now, this is making a long story very short, but pretty much everything was eliminated in these burn pits, from metal to trash to human flesh. Now, if you've ever wondered what it might be like to inhale that concoction day in and day out for years, you don't have to imagine it, because a number of our soldiers were forced to inhale it. And as you might imagine, that was a quick way to a unpleasant death at a young age. So you basically have people close to my age that have these problems, and they're so serious that it inspired Congress, or forced Congress, to pass these statutes. So just in the last 20 or 25 years, then, we basically had people suffering because of what seems like a pretty obviously short-sighted policy like that. So they've changed the rules, so hopefully it won't happen again, but the government does, I'm sorry. I mean, the range is basically my age to 80 that I've seen. Now, in terms of what is more common, I would say, believe it or not, it's people just roughly my age or a little older who are veterans of Iraq, who are veterans of Afghanistan, just because more of them are alive at this point. And just because of that presumptive service connection, I mean, just because you were in Vietnam, you're not actually entitled to anything, but just because of stuff like the burn pits, the government has decided that we put you in such danger that we're basically, if you got cancer or whatever, we're basically going to admit to it. So, but just because our particular clinic has had a number of older clients skewing things, I would say it might be unjust if you're looking at the mean, the average, that 45 to 50 year range, but it basically runs the gamut. Does anyone have any other questions? In my experience, no. I will say that the clinic this semester has about 14 people, and we've been divided into teams. I want to say that there are 4 teams of 3, and I'm in the 1 2-person team. And I think that was because I was seen as someone who had the experience from the summer, since I worked in this clinic over the summer, and I could make up for the missing person with my veteran experience. So the client list was divvied up accordingly. So in this semester, I've only seen a small fraction of people. Now, there might be someone in the clinic who has made a Camp Lejeune claim, but I haven't seen one. And just because it's kind of a random thing what clients you get, I personally have not, for example, worked on a discharge upgrade case, but I know that some of the other students did. But conversely, I got to work on something that most of the other kids didn't, which was an opening brief. So as mentioned, when you kind of get to this appellate level, you're writing a number of briefs. A brief is like a 15, 20-page document. Let's call it an essay to the government why our client should get money, basically. Conversely, the government will write about a 20-page essay saying that, no, your client shouldn't get more money. And then we'll get the chance to respond to that. We get the last shot, as it were, just one last 20-page essay. Actually, our client should get that money. So while most of the other students were writing a sort of response brief, just I had the chance to write the first one. And that's interesting because you get the chance to go out there and do your own research and find the information yourself. Whereas if you're writing that second one, you're basically using the arguments that have come before. I think it's more work to go out and do the research yourself, but I think it helps you learn more about the process. And what that really means is you're looking through the gigantic veterans manual, and it's huge. It's like a phone book, but in theory, just all the secrets you need are in there. And because the process isn't adversarial, it's basically a manual from the government supposedly telling you the best arguments to make against the government. It's like, you should be looking for this, that, and the other thing. You should be attacking government essays for this weakness, to look to see if they didn't structure their arguments like they should. And you're looking at other cases, basically. Other cases where the Court of Veterans Appeals said that this client, who's just like ours, got 100% service connection for mesothelioma, so our client should get it too. That's pretty much a process of any legal system, whether it's the Veterans Court or bankruptcy or anything else. But I specifically have not seen a Camp Lejeune claim.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you all for coming.
All right, just if anyone has any additional one-on-one questions or would like to see any of my other documents, then I'll just be hanging around for a while for anyone so interested.